Welcome back, everybody. Today we're going to finish up the unit on the Cold War. Again, this is more of an era than an event, and so we're going to talk about some of the biggest events that characterize the Cold War today. So this is going to be part three. We've already talked about kind of what the Cold War was as an overview. And then in part two, we talked about how the nuclear weapons that came about from the Cold War era changed the world forever, and certainly changed our ideas of peace and conflict. Today we're going to talk about how the Cold War changed the world. Now, if you remember from part one, there was a term that I raised called a bipolar world. This is a world that's characterized where two countries kind of act as magnetic poles, and countries all over the rest of the world are drawn towards one of these two poles. And in this case, we'll find that politics around the world were completely realigned to either ally with the United States or ally with the Soviet Union, or to try to attempt some kind of shift between them. Many countries didn't really have that luxury. So I'm going to approach this kind of like a Cold War Hall of Fame. We're only going to talk about the most significant ways the Cold War changed the world today. And so because of that, I wanted to kind of make an honorable mention list. One of the things I like to talk about is the Senator Joseph McCarthy in the United States, who really brought about a second Red Scare in the 1950s by creating witch hunts, a term you may have heard in the media in the last couple of years. And a lot of people who were accused or suspected of communism, very often on very, very tenuous evidence at best, were put on things called blacklists, where they were unable to get work because of their rumored association with the Communist Party. In addition, there are other domestic changes that we saw during the Cold War era, like people building bomb shelters in their backyards. It's an interesting comparison to see how the Soviet Union built a lot of nuclear bomb shelters for massive amounts of people. But in America, it became a business where people would actually install bomb shelters in their backyards, where they'd have a kind of survival hideout in case of a nuclear attack. And kids, like they practice lockdowns in school today, or fire drills in school today, in the 1950s and early 60s, used to practice air raids, where they would hide under their desk in the case of nuclear attack. Another honorable mention would be the space race. We talked about this a little bit. The Soviet Union got there first with the Sputnik satellite you see coming into orbit here in 1957, but of course the United States ends up putting a man on the moon. You can read all about that if you believe it's a conspiracy or whatnot. But in 1969, several years later, we maybe won the space race. Again, this was all developed in the context of nuclear weapons and developing ICBM technology as well, which we talked about last time. Another thing the United States did in Europe, as well as in Asia later, was try to use radio broadcasting to promote democracy and liberty in the areas where communist control had taken hold. And this was largely successful in a lot of places. When Khrushchev takes over Russia in the late 1950s, early 60s, there is a kind of de-Stalinization. Some controls are let loose, even to the point where there are uprisings in several Eastern European countries that were forcefully put down, despite being promised some measure of freedom. But the United States was trying to promote democracy and liberty and revolution against communism through the use of the radio. Another honorable mention would be the Berlin Wall. It's kind of a terrible story in a lot of ways. If you remember from previous units, after World War II, Germany was divided into a communist section, East Germany, and a democratic section, West Germany. And the city of Berlin, which was deep inside East Germany, was divided in half into one section, West Berlin, which was Allied, and one section, East Berlin, which was Soviet, which was communist. And there was actually a wall put up in 1961 between the two sides of the city. There were families that didn't see each other for 50 years because of this. So today we're going to discuss, like I said, the most significant ways. So we'll focus on some of the big wars that happened, like the revolution in China and the revolution in Korea, the Cuban Missile Crisis, which is the closest the world ever came to nuclear Armageddon, and the Vietnam conflict we'll make mention of, although we'll come back to that in much more depth later, and the enduring military presence and alliance system that was developed at this time that persists even to this day. Okay, so some of the key terms you want to know for this unit would be the Truman Doctrine, which we're going to talk about, the idea of trying to contain communism, the containment doctrine, the domino theory, the fear that one country going communist would lead to a bunch of other countries going communist, the idea of proxy wars, wars being fought on behalf of two bigger powers in two smaller countries, or two or more smaller countries, or even maybe inside one smaller country. The Chinese Communist Revolution, like we mentioned, the Korean conflict, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Vietnam conflict, and of course military basing we're going to talk about. These would be the terms that would be on the quiz on Edmodo. All right, so some of our big overarching themes. Obviously, the Cold War realigned world power completely. Many poorer nations had to choose sides between the US and the Soviet Union. This led to a series of proxy wars. These were wars in which the United States and Russia essentially funded one side or the other, and the US and Russia fought each other through conflicts in foreign countries. This involved a lot of different shady business, including election interference, espionage of all sorts, backing of military coups, of dictatorships in places. Even though we wanted to promote democracy, the United States supported a lot of military dictatorship and included CIA-backed assassinations that happened, not assassinations that happened in every one of these countries, but in dozens of countries there was massive instability because of this. So we'll go all the way back and start the Truman Doctrine. In 1947, President Truman decided that we needed to resist communist spread throughout the world and actively deploy military force and financial force in order to discourage and stop communism globally. Examples of this: in 1947, the United States gave Greece and Turkey $400 million in aid to support democracy. In 1949, we passed the Marshall Plan, in which we dramatically overhauled Western Europe and rebuilt after World War II in order to protect democracy and capitalism, prevent communist uprisings. And this eventually led to the doctrine of containment, where we promised to contain the spread of communism globally. Remember, communism is a people's movement, so many communists viewed this movement as inevitably global, that it would spread worldwide and people would take over the means of production and oust the capitalist ownership class. We saw that Germany was divided into two countries, and you can see here is the city of Berlin deep inside Eastern Europe, deep inside East Germany, and here it is divided in half, West Berlin divided into three zones, and East Berlin, the Soviet zone. The blue is indicating the Berlin airlift, when the Soviets actually blockaded supplies from coming into Berlin, and the United States had to fly in supplies. It was a great success. The Soviet Union eventually backed off of that, but we went over that in previous times. So one of the big events we'll talk about today is in 1949, Mao Zedong, pictured here in a piece of Chinese propaganda, successfully defeated the nationalists led by the United States ally Chiang Kai-shek and overtook the government in China. They installed a rule by one party of the Communist Party under Mao, and Mao became quite a powerful leader, much in the kind of vein of Stalin. So I don't want to get too much into the details of how he managed to do this, but he did manage to transform the communist idea from an industrial style revolution to a peasant overthrowing the landowner style revolution, and it was pretty violent. They did kill most of the people who owned land by the early 50s. But Mao was worshipped as a hero because he really cleaned up the opium problem and the gambling prostitution problem and brought a sense of peace for several years in the 50s. What this did to the United States, though, was our allies were ousted into the country of Taiwan, which became our ally, and we did not have any relations with China at all until the 1970s under Richard Nixon. And we really feared that the domino theory was coming true, that now that the Soviet Union fell, that a whole bunch of other countries could fall to communism as well. The next country where there was a great conflict was in Korea. So this is pictured the Korean Peninsula, and this is eventually becomes the line of demarcation. Now there's kind of a push and shove back and forth throughout these 3 years. Technically, it was never declared a war. This was called a police action. We never had a congressional declaration of war, but we sent troops to support the dictator who controlled the South, Syngman Rhee, against the communist dictator in the North, Kim Il-sung. And the Kim family became the scary dictatorship of North Korea that we see today. Eventually, this was declared a stalemate, and we divided the country in half. The South was supported by the United States and was allied with U.S. capitalist interests. It was not a democracy, it was a dictatorship until the 1970s or 80s? 1970s, I think, when they finally had democratic elections. And the North became a communist dictatorship, more allied with China and with the Soviet Union. So domino theory was scaring the bejesus out of U.S. decision makers. So, like I said, Korea was divided into two. The North was communist, the South was capitalist. We still have a massive military presence in South Korea, and North Korea is still considered a rogue state, and they definitely have nuclear capabilities, potentially even to reach the United States, continental United States today. It is a scary place to live. I could go into that in another lesson if you guys really want, but look up some of the kind of laws and ways of life in North Korea, and you might be scared that there are like 19 legal haircuts and things like that. So there were all kinds of skirmishes going on in the late 50s, early 60s between the US and the Soviet Union. One of our spy planes was actually shot down in Soviet airspace, and eventually we had to exchange a Soviet prisoner for our pilot of the U-2 spy plane. And one of the big incidents was also in 1959. Cuba fell to communism under Fidel Castro, and helped by the very famous in the United States communist icon Che Guevara. And he overthrew the dictator Batista. Now, Cuba had been an ally of the United States. It was basically the Las Vegas of the 1950s, before Vegas really took hold. Havana was the place where you went to have casinos and gambling and those kind of vacations. And Cuba also provided a lot of tobacco and coffee to the Americas. But Castro, under the communists, nationalized all land and industry and ousted all the rich people in Cuba. And a lot of them came to the Miami area and still generally hate the Castro regime. But the Castro family is still technically in power to this day. The United States tried to fight back. We kind of weakly fought back with the Bay of Pigs, where we sent a whole bunch of rebels, supposedly with U.S. air support, to invade Cuba and oust Castro, but the air support never really came, and this was a huge failed mission. The CIA was very angry. There were a lot of people who believe that this had a lot to do with why John F. Kennedy gets assassinated in 1963. So by 1962, we came to the precipice of nuclear war with Cuba, with Russia, moving nuclear weapons into Cuba. But of course, JFK decided to listen to his cooler-headed advisors and managed to avoid nuclear war. So here you can see a depiction of the range of Soviet missiles that were in Cuba at this time, even though the United States had the blockade all throughout this purple area. The Soviet Union could have nuked the United States and done a tremendous amount of damage, but thankfully John F. Kennedy listened to his advisors, who told him that Khrushchev did not want war, and we avoided nuclear conflict. So that's good. Here we can see the Vietnam conflict illustrated. We're going to get into this in a lot more detail later, but the United States also gets into another huge war that lasts for several years, trying to fight off a communist revolution in Vietnam, which is also a divided country, but eventually we lose this. It's the only war that the United States has lost. Okay, now I'd like you to pause the video in a second and just look at all the United States military interventions into Latin America. Just how many times we actually deployed military or spies to mess with countries to try to prevent communism from breaking out in Latin America. Pause it here. Okay, now I encourage you to pause it again here and look at all these other American military interventions around the world. So my point is, the United States and the CIA, our spy agency, transformed many, many parts of the world in the context of the Cold War. Here again, we see many of the bases that are left over from this time period. Pause it here and take stock of just how much we spend on policing the world from communism. All right, I'm out of time. Take a look at Edmodo for the assignment. Take care, guys.